Okay. All right, so we are online. Thank you very much, Professor Ebru, Dr. Rosmini, and Dr. Ali Ostaran from different parts of the world right now for joining me with this interesting panel. I also want to thank everybody who is watching us on YouTube and listening to us. There are several people there. Before we get into discussion, I just want to say if you have any questions, please post them on YouTube, and that way we'll feature your question on the screen and then we'll get some answers for it. But we can start really quick. I want to introduce the panelists very quickly. So first we have, and I'm just going to go with what I see on my screen. So it's no preference or no gender discrimination or anything. You know, people, they just they just pick up anything and talk about it. So first we have Dr. Ali Ostaran. He is a professor at Eastern Mediterranean University in Northern Cyprus at Faculty of Tourism. And his research areas are marketing, supply chain management, and business administration. And he is also the Vice Dean at the Faculty of Tourism in Eastern Mediterranean University. Second, we have Dr. Rosmini Umar. Dr. Rosmini Umar is Associate Professor at Azman Hashim International Business School. Dr. Rosmini, are you already a full professor or are you Associate Professor? I don't want to make a mistake.
Well, as before, my dear.
Okay, all right, okay. And her research areas are talent management, organizational behavior, and small medium enterprises. Dr. Rosmini Omar has been a visiting scholar at Helsinki Business School as well, which is already quite a long time because I remember when she was my co-supervisor. Since then, she was also visiting many different countries as a visiting faculty member, visiting researcher. And right now she's also heading major research projects from Erasmus. So thank you, Dr. Rosmini, for joining. And then last but not the least, we have Professor Ebru Gunlu Kukulatan. Is that how I say that? Kuchuk Altan. Yes, now I got it right. She's a professor at Dukoz Eylül University in Turkey at business faculty, and her research areas are tourism and hotel management and tourism management. And she is also the chair of the tourism management department. So thank you, Professor Ebru, for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, you're welcome. The idea is for all of us to talk a little bit about thesis defense because not me, but my three panelists are quite experienced working with master's and PhD students, and not only as examiners, but also as supervisors. So you know that people have different type of models that they go through when it comes to thesis. Like in the US, for me, it was very new that you have a committee and the same committee supervises you and the same committee examines your work, right? So you don't have other people examining you. But when I was in Malaysia, that follows British system, and I think that's the same with Turkey and Northern Cyprus, that you have your supervisors, and then when it comes for examination, then you have different people who examine your work, right? So different models. And obviously, I don't want to say that one model is better than other because obviously both models have produced amazing researchers and amazing people in the world. So we'll just focus on our own experiences and we'll try to answer some questions that students have. Now, I already received some questions. We can get into that. But before we get into questions, I just want to give a chance to my panelists if they want to say anything in general before we get into specific questions. So let me start in the reverse order with regards to introductions. Professor Ebru, do you want to say anything?
No, we are just going to share our ideas and our experiences. So if there are going to be some further questions, they are more than welcome to be answered. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Dr. Rosmini?
Now we're good. I'm good to
All
go.
right, thank you. And Dr. Ali Ustaran.
First of all, I need to thank you to invite us for this panel. It's honor for me to be with these professors and with you. I think you are doing very good job for prospecting PhD holders. So no one did this for us. I hope it we will provide beneficial, useful ideas for the newcomers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your nice words. All right, so let's get into the questions directly because I have some questions at hand. Let's start with one general question, and that is, uh, are in your universities, right, where you are at, are you required to have a certain number of students, or is it your I mean, is it up to you on how many students you need to supervise and examine, or is it up to your university? Like, are there any rules, regulations about that? Let me start with Dr. Rosmini. How about your department or your university?
Thank you very much, Dr. Faizan. Yeah, similar to Dr. Ali, thank you so much for inviting me. Um, it's been a great pleasure. Now, talking about UTM, particularly to my school, as Manhattan International Business School, we do kind of like having a policy of how many students should we have, and
Mm-hmm.
normally it's it's not too little, like three or 3 to 5 is, I mean, there's still rooms that we could still accept because being a research universities, we are very much encouraged to accept students, particularly research, so that we can do research together with them. Um, I think 20 is a lot, but sometimes when you keep receiving emails and you receive nice proposals, and then um, in some occasions some professors still receive it, but I think 20 is a very rare. Normally it's between 5 to 10, like that. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rosmini. Let me go to Dr. Ali. How about Faculty of Tourism at Eastern Mediterranean University? Ali, sorry, you are mute, so just please unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry. In EMU, the average supervisorship duties are like 5 to 10 students. But sometimes, because of the expertise, specialty of the professors, some of the professors may have more students than others. As you know, there is a capacity for everybody. It should not be too much. Otherwise, you will not allocate enough time for your students, and at the end, the resulting thesis and the publications will be deficient. So, as a dean's office, we don't like to give too many supervisorships over capacity, to decrease the quality of the work and to decrease the quality of time. So I can agree with Dr. Rosmini. It is between 5 to 10. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ali. And then let me move on to Professor Ebru. How about your department?
Well, actually, we don't have that kind of a regulation as well. As other panelists just underlined, you are ought to have a maximum, I guess, 10 students, right? Because I agree with Dr. Ali, you have your own capacity. If you want to have a successful work at the end as an output, you need to your capacity as well, because the students are ought to choose their supervisors here. They have some proposals, and according to your expertise, they do consult you and ask you whether you accept them or not. So, depending on the proposal, depending on the atmosphere between the student and the supervisor, you need to decide whether you can go ahead or not. But actually, yes, 5 students. For me, 5 students is really very high in number. But up to 10, you can go on.
All right, thank you. So this is all good. Now, I have another very quick question related to this, and the question is, in many places, students have to find out who they want to work with, the supervisors, right? So students need to reach out to a professor and then see if they want to be their supervisor. Now, in many cases, student wants to go to somebody who is really famous or somebody who is really, really good at that area, but that's not the only student who wants that. There are many students who want that type of thing. And I know several universities where many people apply just to work with one supervisor, and and they are not taken into that program only because the supervisor is up to the head in the water. It's not possible. So what do you suggest in that case to students if they want to go to a department only because of one professor, but that professor is really full, I mean, cannot take any students, then in that case, should the students still go because there might be a chance to work with that person in the future? Or should that student change their way, like, okay, no, I don't want to work here? What do you think, Dr. Ali?
According to me, if the faculty together with that famous person has reputation, has enough capacity to educate the students, I mean, the level of education of the school faculty is important. If it is high quality or as expected by the student, students should prefer to go still without that person. I mean, because he will use that name at the end. Everybody knows Faizan Ali from University of South Florida. So I'm sure after the graduation, he will have good reputation as well.
Thank you very much, Ali, for your answer. Let me move to Dr. Rosmini. What is your suggestion in this type of scenario?
Students normally will probably browse the school's website and so on and so forth, and learning also from the publication of these expert professors. But again, at the end of the day, I think the student need to also understand the fact that what they need throughout the whole journey is, number one, quality of supervision, and also sometimes PhD, and I'm talking also about DBA, it's a long journey. Normally you're stuck with that person, your supervisor, for about 3-4 years. It can be more than that, 5 years. So that requires a strong commitment from both sides, other than like a chemistry. Sometimes you feel that you want to work with someone who's very famous, but you forgot that this famous person, like what Dr. Ali said, are also being wanted by other responsibilities, including other students, and then they're busy doing traveling for talk conferences and also research. So again, back to basic, I think the student need to first communicate with the person that they're interested, and see from there. Normally expert professors like Dr. Ali and Dr. Ebru, they will respond, and if they could not, I think I'm doing the same thing too. If I feel that the bin is already full, I will say I have to decline, because I need to pay attention with the existing one that so I give them about, like, okay, I'm free probably in 2021, and if they can wait, yes. But if they could not wait, we could also suggest, I normally suggest my colleagues whom I think also as good as these expert professors, because
All
at the
right,
end
thank you.
it's about the long marriage. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Rosmini. Very interesting practical tips. So, Dr. Ebru, what is your take on this question?
Well, of course, this is a challenge, because if the student is persisting on the same person because he is wanted and he is a famous one, it is sometimes not easy to convince him or her to go ahead with another one. However, I do also suggest the other professors as well, because it's not fair. Because every supervisor has his own strengths and weaknesses. So maybe the name is really very famous, but maybe the quality of the thesis would not be that much, because he is really full with other researchers as well. So it needs to also give some chance to other professors as well. So I'm trying to point at the research fields that the other professors are interested in. And of course, just dissertation is not the only link between the student and the other professors. If you want to be famous as well as that man or the other researcher, it means that you can make other research as well. So thesis is not the only link between the professors, the well-known professors and the experts in the area. So you can do many other research if the other supervisor or if the other professor says yes. As Dr. Rosbini said, it's the chemistry. If you want to do any kind of research, you can do it, but the dissertation is something else.
Thank you very much. I completely agree. So I've seen this, and my own students know this as well. Sometimes when people are busy, then it's very difficult to provide quality supervision to students, especially if students come with a lot of expectations, right? So it's really important for students. I mean, I understand the students want to get with a famous professor, but I always say that you are a research student, you need to do some research before going somewhere. And that research should not include only the fame, but also the quality of supervision, and maybe reach out to other students from the same department and see what do they suggest. So thank you very much. I know this was not about thesis defense, but this actually takes us into thesis defense. It's a good segue to thesis defense because, when we talk about thesis defense, supervision is, a predecessor to that one. There's one question that I got from somebody. I just want to show this on the screen, and maybe we can go with this, and then we can move into thesis defense questions. The question is how to find the balance between our own originality and intention and supervisor's feedback. So I suppose it's like you go with your own idea, and then your supervisor gives you a lot of feedback to change that idea into something else. So how do we balance that? Let's start with Dr. Rosmini. What do you think, Dr. Rosmini?
Definitely a very interesting question, because having experience with many students also. Normally students come to us with their own research agenda, research dreams. So the first thing that crack the balance is that normally supervisors will, when the students come to the supervisor and they have a discussion, it is very important for the students as well as the supervisors to find a middle ground whereby both party could agree on a specific topic, and up until coming up with the conceptual framework, plus also the methodology, and this should come very early before you start going with towards the proposal defense. So how to find the balance? I guess it requires a lot of discussion, and if the students are very interested to pursue the topic that he's looking into, because he feel a strong connection that he knows that he could reach originality, when he come to visit the professor or the supervisor, it is very, very crucial that he's ready with great literature review. He has to do a very solid homework to it's not about impressing, doing the impression towards your supervisor, but to defend and to elaborate and to explain, to critically having a constructive argument, stating that what you want to do. And normally professors are very happy to hear from the student.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosmini. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to go with specific questions to different panelists because we need to cover the thesis defense. So I just want to share one very good example with you about this particular question. So I skydive, okay, and when you skydive, it's dangerous. I mean, nobody in their sane mind want to jump out of the plane, right? If if somebody asks you like jump out of the plane, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So what happens is when you go for the first time, right before you jump, there's a trainer behind you, and right before you jump, like maybe 5 seconds before that, that trainer says something completely illogical and excuse my language, but dumb in your ear, and then you feel like what's going on, right? And while you feel what's going on, they push you. So basically, it's like a fake way of moving your brain from the jump into something else. And while you do not understand this, the next moment you are in the air falling down. So I normally say this to my students because many students come with a lot of love towards one topic. And I tell them actually what happens is in the skydiving, if before you jump, you hold on to anything, you're going to kill yourself. And many times, research ideas are like this. If you hold on to one thing, you are actually not looking into a lot of other possibilities. So when your supervisor asks you to look into different directions, that's actually to give you a little bit exposure to different areas related to your topic. So you might end up with something really, really interesting. So be open. And then if you feel after looking into all this, you don't like all of those ideas, then you can always come back to your original idea. But initially, you should be open to these different suggestions from your supervisors. All right, so let's now jump into the thesis defense questions. Now, the first question I have is for Dr. Ali. And Dr. Ali, tell me this. The question is, what are the pre-preparation steps just before the defense time? So, like, that the defense is going to come in a month time. How do you suggest your students to prepare for that?
First of all, as you say, with preparation, really, you should see, I mean, as students should see this as a real preparation steps. I mean, they need to really prepare themselves. How? Okay, they need to have, first of all, they need to think what to present in the defense, because most of the times they have confusion and they have problems if they have not think about what to present in the defense. And some group of the students, they want to present everything in the defense, everything they have. Sometimes we see some slides like 100 slides, or sometimes we see that they copied and pasted the whole text to the slides. And they try, when they come and start the defense, when we say them, okay, you have 15 minutes to present, or you have 20 minutes to present, they shocked. And some of them, they try to read as fast as possible to present everything to us. So this will create a panic situation for them, and it is useless. They don't need to do this. So my first recommendation to them is to make a preparation to plan what to present. As all we know and all they can guess, there are some critical points in the thesis to be presented. Like the main chapters, I know that from one university to another university, these chapters can be different, but mainly we have 5 main parts in the defense: introduction, literature review, methodology, results, discussion may be included in the results, and the conclusion. So this 5 structure should be followed in the defense, and they don't need to present everything in the defense. So first they need to prepare this, what to present, and then they should prepare their slides, and then they should do a kind of rehearsal. They need to try it. They can invite their family members, their friends to make the presentation to them. This is very important to see their deficient parts, weak parts, that they improve. This process, yes, I know that for PhD it is more individual process to write. But in this process of preparing the defense, I recommend them to make this preparation together in supervision of supervisor. Because when the student has the green ticket, the golden ticket, yes, the supervisor will tell them you can take the defense. It means supervisor already approved the completion of the defense. It means supervisor is satisfied about the final destination, final point of that thesis. That's why supervisor, I am sure that all supervisors will guide the students to be prepared for the defense. Advices can be taken from the supervisor. If you like, I can stop. I don't know if other professors have some other recommendations.
Sure. Thank you, Ali. Yeah, for this question, I think I'll go to all the panelists because this is really, really important. And I think while with this question about preparation, I want to show another question on the screen, and then maybe Dr. Rosmini and Professor Ebru, you answer both of them together because both of them go together with each other. The other question was how the students and the supervisor should prepare for the defense. So Ali already, covered some of that. Dr. Rosmini, how is your experience with this? Like, what would you suggest?
Thank you so much. I always follow what I call the robust, ROBUST formula. I guess for me and also for my students. R robust, R stands for respect. What I will do is that both I and my student will show our respect towards the examiners. How do we do that? Number one, I will together do a search about this external or especially external examiners. I'll Google them and at least read some of the articles, read some of the publications, and I'm going to ask my students to also do the same thing too, because the moment when the Viva day comes, the first thing that my students need to do is that they need to do some ice breaking and introduction. And that could be done much better if he or she did some homework before the Viva. O stands with open your mind. So what we meant by open our mind for me and both my student is that we got to stay relaxed. Number one, sleep well. And normally I have to admit, if they are international student, I think Faizan knows about it. That happens to Dr. Manal, Dr. Faizan's wife. She came down from the US and she came about like 2-3 days before the Viva. There was a day when she said she want to go out to KLCC, the big shopping mall in Kuala Lumpur, to buy some clothes. I said, no, you stay in the hotel. Even the hotel, it's like a quarantine because, anything can happen. So I just want my student to be prepared and get all the strengths. And B, robust, B stands for brave. It's very important for the student to feel confident, but not overconfident. So how do we achieve confidence is that however busy my day and my schedule will be, I will ask all my students to do number one, to prepare the slides a month before, and then they will come to me do the mock Viva. We have a range of students, Dr. Ali and Dr. Ebru. Some are great, like Dr. Faizan. First time mock is done. I'm going to play, in every mock session, I'll be playing the devil, the external examiner, or even the internal, because sometimes internal can be the one that turn out to be the devil in comparison to the external. So, but if the students are very average, what I will do is that I'm going to drill him or her more than once. this is the time when I'll also check the slides. I'll tell them no, not many words, but full of diagrams, because you're going to be the storyteller during the day. And then that stands for B, and you have U. U stands for utilizing the time, between what will be the time like Dr. Ali said, some universities put up 20 minutes, some just put up 20, 25, 15 minutes. So we have to gauge with the student slides how many should we go. So it's like a cooperation together. And I always push my students for motivation, as well as just to make them not to be overconfident and drop down their bragging, because some students, they're very defensive and they like to brag. So this is something that examiners probably do not like. S stands for synchronizing between what's in the slide, what's the story to be presented during the viva, together with the real content of the thesis which the examiners have read before the viva. And T stands for treat the question of the examiners with a mind that they're asking because they want clarification rather than for the sake of testing. So these are the things that I normally told my student. I also do the same thing too for them.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rosmini. It actually reminds me of a lot of stuff that I did 6 years ago. Oh, no, 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. So thank you for all that. Okay, let me move to Dr. Ebru. Dr. Ebru, do you want to take this question about how do we prepare before the defense on part of student as well as the supervisor?
Yeah. On part of the student, my colleagues just try to underline, I'm going to say the same things actually, because we all know that no one is going to grant the student the degree because he made a research project. He needs to also defend it in front of the committee members and convince that he knows the subject. So this is one of the points. However, the truth is that success or failure is usually determined mainly by the content of a thesis. So if the research is good enough and the student actually did the work himself, it is highly unlikely that a nervous performance in a defense will lead to a failure. So it is twofold. I mean, you need to be, as a student, be sure about the research that you have done, and also your supervisor should believe in you, so that the defense is going to be a successful one at the end. Actually, I think it should be the student who needs to find out his own way of presenting and defending what he has done so far. But however, it doesn't mean that the supervisor should do nothing. Of course, the supervisor has many responsibilities as well. For me, as a supervisor, I try to find out that the dissertation is really a dissertation at the end, because I try to put as much as I can for a successful output. If I believe in the work done, if I really believe that there might be some shortages, it happens, of course. Not all the projects or the research projects are really 100% perfect. But if I believe that after the critics, it can be improved as well, I try to put my student at ease, try to convince him that this is not the end of life, so that by the critics, by the feedback, we are going to improve what we have done so far. So if the student knows this, and if the student knows that the supervisor is supporting him, even before the defense and during the defense, they do not feel themselves under stress. So I think this supervisor-student fit is very important for that. And of course, the student needs to be prepared because he has done the research himself, the revisions, and it is time to show it. So if he is confident enough, but as Dr. Rosmini said, not overconfident, confident enough, the rate of making mistakes during the defense is going to be eliminated just before the defense time. This is what I may say now.
All right, thank you very much. So now these are all really practical suggestions. So we actually have another question that goes from within this, because we talked about the defense and be on time and slides and everything, right? And earlier, I like what you said, that some people come with 100 slides or 80 slides or something like this, right? And most of those students then read those slides, which is even worse, right? So my question is that obviously students have put a lot of work into the thesis. If it's a PhD, then it's much more than if it's a master's, but it's a lot of work for students to put into that. And, you know, logically, they want to present their work. So they want to put pretty much everything on the slides to show that they have done all these things, right? Now, if it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes of presentation, the question is which part of the thesis must be really focused on during the defense. Let's start with Dr. Rosemini first, and then we can move to other panelists.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Faizan. Which part of the thesis must be focused on? Okay. I'm looking at from both the examiner's angle plus also the supervisors. Normally, what we're looking at is the contribution of the thesis to the universe of knowledge. Particularly in a much simpler word, the clarity in stating the gaps of the study. But I do agree with Professor Ibru, because the thesis has been read before the viva. So the students coming to this session, I hope you got to be very good in developing, in progressing your research up until the stage, up even the final finish line of chapter 5. You got to do a very good job. And having said that, chapter 5 is very, very crucial to me and probably to most examiners, because chapter 5 is where you confess that what you have earlier promised in chapter 1, all the research questions and research objective, you have answered it in chapter 5. Chapter 5 belongs to you. It should be crispy. Why is it crispy? Because it's new, it's original. So it is not that bulky as per the literature review, particularly for quantitative studies. All right. So that's pretty much, aside from we talk about gaps and contribution, and then chapter 3 is also something as an examiner that I really look into, because chapter 3 determine whether you go to the forest with the right tools. If you don't have the right tools, you know, to prune the trees whatsoever. What I mean by trees is that, you know, the question, the research inquiries and so on and so forth, you will not get chapter 4 correctly. And when chapter 4 is incorrect, there goes your chapter 5. So it's not, how do I say? It's like 1, 3, and 5 are normally something that we pay attention to. Sampling. I always have that question. If I do not see a very good explanation and discussion in the thesis. Other than that, normally when I ask questions, when I become examiners, is because I need clarification of those parts and the rest of the other parts. And thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rosemini. Because some people are asking, so I just want to say that yes, some people write many more chapters than the traditional 5. But what Dr. Rosemini was referring to is the traditional structure, where chapter 1 is introduction, chapter 2 is literature, chapter 3 is methodology, 4 is findings, 5 is conclusion and implication. So just for the sake of clarification. All right. So let me move to Dr. Ebru. The same question, which part of the thesis do you think should be most focused on during the defense?
Okay, Dr. Faizan, during such a short period of time, of course, it is necessary to convey the right message to the audience, the relevance and the importance of the work that you have done. So you do not need to retell the content of the thesis. I agree with Dr. Rosmini, and instead you need to focus on the most important parts. For me, this is introduction, where you state your problem. This is very important because you need to ask a question and answer that is this really worth of my time as a member of the committee to listen to that thesis defense. So in the introduction part, you give this message. That's why you have to get the attention of the audience first of all, so that they think that yes, this problem statement might give us some original conclusion at the end. That's why introduction and the problem statement is the most, for me, crucial part of the presentation, and of course the methodology, because in master and in PhD it may differ what we are expecting from the students. However, in PhD, I really want to see that the methodology, I mean, research methodology is known, and the PhD candidate is expert in that at this moment. So that's why methodology is the other part, and the conclusion, of course. What you have found out, but what you think about the things that you have found out. So the comment of the also candidate should convince me that he knows this. He has the necessary knowledge at the end. So this is what I am expecting: introduction, problem statement, methodology, and conclusion. I guess it's the same with Dr. Rosmin.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ebru. And Ali, Dr. Ali, what is your take on this question?
So what I know, I can tell exactly by listening also Professor Ebru and Professor Rosmini, and also together with my thoughts, I can tell you that the least important chapter in the defense presentation is chapter 2. We can agree on this. So nobody mentioned this, but most of the students, I see that they are putting so many slides and explanations and presentations on chapter 2, and they forget that jury members already read the thesis. So you don't need to put too many slides on chapter 2. Put the list, only the theories, the main descriptions that will help you to explain your research model, hypothesis, your research question is enough. So for me, I think the others, I mean, chapter 1, 3, 4, and 5 can have enough weight, because I cannot ignore and tell that focus on chapter 4 and more than others. For me, as Professor and Professor Rosmini said, for me, these other chapters, they are very strictly important. So problem statement, purpose of the study, research question, all of these existing in introduction. So she needs to present. I know that there in some countries we have monitoring committees. While reaching to the thesis, the monitoring committee examines, and in the proposal as well, maybe the committee listens. But in the defense, in North Cyprus, for example, in the defense, we have new attendees, new jury members. This will be the first time that they will listen. So I always recommend my students to repeat the purpose, the problem, and research question, the need for study, contribution of the study in this. But these are many subtitles, but can be presented in 2 slides. 2 slides enough for presenting this. And then methodology, results, and conclusion, they are extremely important. Probably the results section, most of the members will listen the results first time, because monitoring as well, maybe they have not seen the results before the defense, or okay, they read it in the thesis, but they want to listen the results from the member. So for me, the other 4 chapters they have equal weight. But 15 minutes, what I should say, 15 minutes presentation should not be more than 20 slides. If it is 20, 25 minutes, should not be more than 30 slides. Yes, that's all.
All right. Thank you, Ali. I really like yours, Dr. Rosmini's and Dr. Ebru's answers. So I just want to conclude this and clarify, because we talked about chapters and all that. So for all the students, especially new research students, mentioning specific chapters does not undermine other chapters, especially when you're writing it. All of them are important, all the chapters that you are doing. But when you're presenting it, you have 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. You cannot present everything. So then you have to focus on the parts which are really your work, original work, right? That's why it's normally your introduction, research gaps, research aim. Then you may just want to go with the main theory that you have, or what hypothesis do you have, or something like this, methodology, main findings, and then conclusions. So that's what all the panelists were talking about. So it does not undermine while you are writing your thesis. Okay, so another very interesting question that we have is, what are your expectations from a master's student and a PhD student in defense as an examiner? Because obviously the level of robustness is different for a master's student and for a PhD student. So when you are an examiner, how do you set your expectations? So let me start with Professor Ebru first, and then we can move along.
Well, for me, the difference is the depth of the research, I guess, that they do and they are expected to complete at their institution. Because master degree is like a technical competence, and it is not necessary to have that full comprehension of the literature. Of course, they need to possess the necessary knowledge, but they learn how to design a research. So they are learning the technical points which are necessary. And they do, of course, at the end become specialists, and when compared to the previous steps, they learn how to make the research, how to design it, and how to state a problem technically. And they learn the methods that they can use in order to achieve the hypothesis that they need to find out at the end. And it's like an advanced undergraduate for me. And the thesis is usually a mess of assumptions and some quotes from the other published authors. This is the master's dissertation. So they are trying to find out an interesting insight, and they are trying to find out the necessary contribution that they can make. However, PhD teaches the students to take those flashes and flesh them out as an origin. PhD candidate, I guess, they know they need to demonstrate their competence, I guess. So more comprehensive and more conceptual issues are just expected from them. This is my opinion.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ebru. For the sake of the time, I'm going to move to specific questions to specific panelists, right? Because we need to cover a few important points. So there are several questions about in the Viva room, right? So when the examiners, the supervisors, or the same people with the student are in the room, there's a very interesting question, and my experiences are otherwise. But this question, let me ask this question of Dr. Rosmini. How much should the supervisor intervene during the defense?
Okay. I'm not sure of other universities and other system. As per UTM and as per other places that I have experienced in examination, the supervisor should control herself or himself from adding up to the presentation of the Viva by the student. Normally, in most universities in Malaysia, we have a meeting before the Viva. It's like before the student present, the panel will convene, and then we will have a very short meeting, and then the student present, and then we have another meeting. We let the student out of the room, including the supervisor, and then we make the decision. But upon decision making, then the chair normally asks the supervisors, are there anything that they would like to add? I hope that I answered the question. They should try to control themselves from intervening in the process of the defense.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Rosmini. The other question I have is for Dr. Ali, and the question is, if one or more examiners give unfair criticism, right, during the defense, how to respond it from the student and supervisor perspective?
Thank you for the question. So this the key word for this question is called respect. Always, because this is the time of examination. You may disagree, you may think that it is unfair as a supervisor or as a student, but he or she is the jury member, the examiner at the time. First of all, you need to respect, and kindly, politely, the student should try to explain the ideas, and they should defend. This is defense. The name is defense. So you need to defend your ideas. You should not always say yes, you are right. No, you should defend your ideas by giving references scientifically, by citing the theories. So after putting these citations and academic references, no one can criticize you about your ideas. So you should try to defend your ideas, but I'm talking about the extreme situation. If still the examiner continues to say, no, you are right, this is fair, no, this is right, then the student should take the note and tell that, yes, I respect your ideas. I will recheck this again with my supervisor to improve that part.
All right, thank you, Ali. I completely agree. So respect is the key here, and I say this all the time to my students as well. Not only with thesis, but also when your papers go out for review. That sometimes you just don't agree to the to examiners or to reviewers, and you can obviously put your point across with respect. So the next question I have is for Dr. Ebru. Something similar, just a little bit different. So the first question was, how about if it's unnecessary criticism? This question is, how about if you don't know the answer and they ask you? So how do you respond to that?
Well, usually the students try to answer it somehow, but it is best to recognize and admit it when the research didn't address the topic or you do not know the answer. So as a student, you are not ought to know everything. We cannot know everything. So if an examiner will ask a question that you do not know as an answer, so they sometimes want to see what you think about it and how you are going to defend your idea, as Dr. Ali pointed out. So if it doesn't address the specific point, or the student is impulsive, that the project designed to answer the question might look like if the student, if the audience is expecting the same thing. So you may say, I don't know, or I don't know, but I would think that if X, Y, Z is going to be like that. So you need to convince that you are thinking as an academic. So this is the issue, but you need to admit that you do not know. But if you were ought to just find it out, you would do blah, 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 blah. So this is what I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ebru. Very good answer. I think this is what I have been trained for. Dr. Muslim is here and he's listening. He was my supervisor as well. And he told me the same thing as well as Dr. Rosmini, that, it's completely fine if you do not know anything. Or sometimes your supervisor, your examiners are much more experienced. So they might look at something from a completely different perspective. And if they say so, instead of being defensive, you just admit that, yes, I don't know this, or but also there's a limit to this. You don't want to say this to all the questions,
Yes.
right? Like, yes, I don't know this, I'll look at it later on. So just make sure that you're prepared, just in case if there's something, then you can always say that. Okay, the next question I have is for Dr. Rosmini, and the question is, should we communicate with any of the examiners before the defense? If yes, how? I know that in IBS we were not required, in my alma mater we were not required to do that, or in fact it was not even allowed to do that. But I don't know if other places have this rule. What do you think, Dr. Rosemary?
Yeah, in most cases, it is good actually for the students not to communicate with the examiners before the defense, because I think there need to be a strong stance on being professional, because we're afraid that if you communicate with the examiners before the event, before the defense, it might lead to something which sometimes you can cross the lines and so on and so forth. However, if there are occasions where the university allows and the supervisors allow it to, so probably an email, but I do not, I have not an experience of having that as an examiner, plus also being the supervisors. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much. I wouldn't agree. I would not go for it. Yeah, but
All
you
right.
can
Yes.
ask for others.
I don't know how to. There are a lot of good questions coming in. I don't know how to get them clear. But one thing is that a lot of questions are not about defense, but about writing the thesis, which is a complete different area, right? And I think we can do another panel in the future talking about how do you write the thesis, like what are some challenges there, right? Because the time is finishing, I have three questions, and then these three questions would move to all the panelists because these are generic questions. Number one, it's this question. Hold on. Where did it go? Okay, here. So let's start with Dr. Ebru. The question is, what is the biggest challenge for you as an examiner during the defense, both in face-to-face or online, if you have have had any chance of doing a thesis defense online?
Okay. Online, the technology itself is the most important challenge, I guess, because the internet connection, it can be timed out. Sometimes it's so low, so you cannot get connected. So it is putting both the examiners and the members of the board and also the student under stress. So I guess in online, the technology itself is the most important challenge. This is for me, of course. And the main challenge for me as an examiner is, again, I'm going to say the same thing. I'm repeating myself, but the supervisor and student fit is very important, I guess, because sometimes we do not have the chance to choose the students ourselves, because it depends on the circumstances. There are lots of dynamics. So if the student doesn't perform well, or if I believe that this dissertation is not successful enough, if the student didn't do what I advised and recommended him or her, and if my words are not cared by the student, at the end, I'm going to be ashamed as well, because the supervisor is also responsible for the output. That's why at the defense time, if I do not believe in the research done, this is the most important challenge for me. So before the defense time, I need to really make sure that everything is okay. And the student and the supervisor, even the ideas, even the speed, even the timing, etc., those should be the same. We should be on the same side. That's why this is, I guess, the most important thing for me.
Thank you, Dr. Ebru. Dr. Rosmini, how about you? What is your most common challenge as an examiner? Dr. Rosmini, you are mute. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I agree with Dr. Ebru. The technology, sometimes we don't expect glitches, but it happens. And number two, when it comes to online, because of this COVID-19, we're given a soft copy of the thesis. It's quite challenging when, I'm like 50s and then reading everything to online. And then the Viva is online, what happened is that we need to upload the what do you call that, the online soft copy, which to be honest, I still spend my own papers just to get everything hard copy to read, so because that will I feel happy reading the thesis whenever, that's a thing. But across both face to face and also online, I think experiencing many times of becoming an examiner, I enjoy the session because it is an intellectual discussion. A little challenge could happen when the students is a little bit defensive or highly defensive, because when we examine student, I'm the kind of an examiner that I need clarification. That's number one. Number two, if it's wrong, when I read the thesis, it's not perfect. There's something missing there. There's a gap. So during the Viva is a time when I want to lead, want to hint the student to somehow grab what is the right thing to do and answer. But if he is stuck with the things which is still at flaw, that will be a challenge for us, the examiner, to somehow open up. So that's why robust O is very important, to be very open-minded. I think that's the only,
Thank you,
experience.
Dr. Rosmini. So now I will move to Dr. Ali. The same question, as an examiner, what is your biggest challenge in face-to-face or in online environment?
Let me start with the extreme examples. Just 1 month ago, my PhD student took the online defense, and he has COVID-19. I mean, coronavirus. He was trying to present the 4 years this thesis, but because of health conditions, it was very difficult for him. And as his supervisor, it was very difficult for me because I was very difficult situation. This is my biggest challenge in my life. One of the biggest challenge in my supervisorship life. Another one is called supervisor and student disagreement. Sometimes one or two defenses I attended, supervisor and student, they have disagreement, and when they have argument, difficult challenges for us as examiner to decide, because they are thinking differently. And one of the most biggest challenge for me as an examiner is bad thesis. If the thesis is good, if the dissertation is good, very comfortable, very happy, satisfied to be one of the examiner for that jury. But if the thesis is not written properly and there are majority of the thesis full with weak parts, this is the most dissatisfied examination, and it makes me irritated as an examiner. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ali. I cannot tell you, I'm so thankful to obviously my panelists, but everybody who is watching. There are consistently a lot of questions coming in, and I think we probably have to do another 1 or 2 panels to answer all these questions, but time is limited. So I have summarized a few questions into one question, and this is, I promise, the last question to all of you. And the question is, can you please list 3 of the most commonly asked questions from your side? So as an examiner, when you are there, I mean, of course, there are many specific questions, but the most common questions that you ask, any 3 of them. Let's start with Dr. Ebru.
When you ask promptly, so I cannot answer it that fast. 3 most commonly asked questions from my side. Well, usually I ask the students, I'm not going to list 3 maybe, but the most important thing that I try to find out what this process, how this process contributed to the students' self-improvement. This is the thing. And the second thing is that I always ask this as an examiner. If you were at the beginning stage once again, what you would do different? For example, this might be the second thing that I may ask. I usually ask to the students, but I cannot find the third one, Faisal. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. So your second question is very interesting because I remember Dr. Rosmini telling me exactly the same thing, that you should be prepared, and then the idea was to understand what are the limitations of your research, and then you don't want to do the same thing again. Thank you so much, Dr. Ebru. Let's move with this question to Dr. Rosmini. Do you have 3 questions for us?
To be honest, as an examiner, I do not have common questions. Normally, when I read the thesis, that's when I come up with question because looking at the things when things are not clear, then I ask. And talking about this non-clarity of in the thesis, normally the students are caught. Normally, in most cases, the problem statement, because I'm not sure whether this happened in Malaysia, because I'm receiving lots of Asian students, not happening in Europe probably, but in the case of Asian thesis, this is what I see: problem statement. They're not able to articulate in their writing of chapter 1, that particular section, clarity of the argument in terms of the gaps. That's number 1. Number 2, as I said earlier, chapter 3, most students are not well versed in what tools they normally they're the reason why, the reason and the rationale why they pick up the sampling strategy and so on and so forth. Maybe it's not happening in Europe, but in Asia, students normally these days, they tend to take up sample thesis, and from the sample thesis of their seniors, they make it like a Bible that they follow through without even thinking, and therefore there's rigidity in the way they think. They don't think, they just do it mechanically, particularly chapter 3 and also chapter 4. Always caught the quantitative students, and therefore chapter 5 becomes very mechanical. They use the same thing again and again. So when I see that in the thesis, that's when my question cropped up. I become the devil. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rosmini, for this answer. And then lastly, I'll move to Dr. Ali. What is your answer to this? Or do you have 3 questions?
I found them now, actually, because I was thinking what I am asking during the defense. 3, okay, I tried to summarize 3 critical things that I can ask in a defense. One is called research question. Usually students, they forget to state their question within the thesis or within the presentation. For me, research question, or it can be statement as well, it should not have a question mark, but they need to summarize it, because the thesis is reflected in this big question. That's why I always, if I see they have lack of knowledge and in presentation of that question, I always ask them, summarize, represent your research question to us. Second question probably is about originality, because for me, if it is dissertation, it must, and not for me actually, for the academic world, it should be original. They need to tell us what they have done different than the previous studies, existing knowledge, how they what makes their thesis different, original, because this is expected, this is precondition for a dissertation. And the third one is probably I can say that theoretical contribution, practical implication part, because at the end the usage, the output of the thesis is very important. We are criticized most of the times, we are writing our articles and thesis for us, but actually our intention is not this. We are trying to contribute to the theory plus the industry, practical implications for the real world, the industry, managers, stakeholders, decision makers. That's why I always ask the students to tell how the real industry decision maker practitioners can use their thesis results in their daily life. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ali. To conclude this, I think obviously the examiners are not devils. They are not there to make you fail your work. It's not like this. If you know there are a lot of students here, of course, examiners want to examine you, test your knowledge in the work that you have done. And sometimes they do tricky questions, but it's important that for all the students, there are certain things that you should know by heart. I mean, you should really know. It doesn't matter how the question comes to you, but you should know that. And there are 7 simple things that I normally have my students know them. One is, what's the gap? Like, what's the research gap? And it doesn't matter how the examiner asks you, you should know what the research gap is, leading to what is the problem. So gaps and problems are different things. Gap leads to a problem, so you should know what the research problem is. And then what are your main theories or theory or whatever you have used? What's that and why you have used it? Then the main methodological stance. What is your methodology stance? What's important is that in methodology, you should not only know why you are using that methodology, but you should also know why you are not using the competing stances or why you are not picking up the other methodologies, right? So, and then your main findings, what are your main contributions in terms of originality, like what Dr. Ali said. And lastly, the limitations, like what Dr. Ebru said. If you are given an opportunity to do all this again, how are you going to do that, right? How are you going to exclude all those limitations? So thank you very much with all the answers. I promise all the audience that we'll do another panel with all the remaining questions, because there are so many questions from how to dress to how to talk and many things, you know. So when we conclude, I just want each panelist to, you know, say 1 or 2 sentences to all the students who are watching, who are going to go up soon for their thesis defense. Any last words? So let's start with Dr. Rosmini first, and then we can move along.
Okay, I wish all the students who's watching this YouTube, including my students, and I'm sure rest of the students are in various parts of the world, I wish you all the best. Doing PhD and even DBA is something very, very crucial these days, because we need to have an increased number of people who can independently do research. So DBA and PhD, you know, this Viva is part of the process for you to gain license to do research on your own, and you should continue doing that. So celebrate the time when you're facing the Viva. It's just storytelling, and you can do it. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Rosmini. Dr. Ebru, any last words, suggestions?
I also wish them luck in their research. For the supervisor, it is necessary to make the student ready, but it is the main responsibility of the student to get ready. So this is a long journey, and they need to enjoy each step, and they do not need to be fast enough. They have to know that what they are experiencing is really very valuable. It's precious. So I hope they are going to enjoy their journey, not only themselves, but with their supervisors as well. I wish them
Thank
good
you,
luck.
Dr. Ebru. And lastly, Dr. Ali, any last words, suggestions?
Thank you. Let me give my last verse on the recommendations that I am giving to my PhD students. That when they come to me to find a topic or to supervise them, I always ask them two questions. You need to find a topic that you love, that is interested for you, because this PhD journey is very long process, and most of the times we become depressed, most of difficult times. So in order to continue, it is like a marriage, I say. It is like so in order to continue with your thesis, you need to love it. And in addition to this, they need to choose the topic that they feel strong in terms of knowledge, in terms of their ability. So if these two things comes together, I'm sure there are many others that you can add, but if these two things come together, you can reach to the end, to the defense session. And believe me, when you reach to that defense time, it should be the easiest part for you. Why? Because you love your subject, you are strong, and during these years, you become much more knowledgeable than the committee members. This is expected, actually. You will work on this, you will read the recent articles, and I am sure you will become more knowledgeable than your supervisor. So don't worry when you reach to that point. This will be very easy,
Yeah, absolutely.
easy time for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Once again, thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to everybody who is watching. Especially, I'm so proud and I'm so happy to see Dr. Muslim also. Thank you, Dr. Muslim, for your questions. And to all the other participants, like I said, I promise we'll do another panel and answer all the questions. So thank you again. Have a good day, stay safe, and God bless you all.